Okay, but before we open this up, I want to ask Lissa and Greg to say a little bit about, other than the two of you, who's earning money off of your industry? You know, what kind of people are being employed, and are these jobs that are growing, and what are we talking about in terms of ocean jobs that are associated? First, Greg, and then Lissa.
Well, if you count, I guess, you know, because I'm in the entertainment business and the educational business, it's hard to, and we're making all these films solely about the ocean. You could probably say that at least 7 people at every one of our museum theaters are dedicated to showing and advertising and getting school kids to come to those films in each community every year. So 7 times 211 museums in 32 countries is 1,400 people, plus tremendous number of teachers and advocates in each community. It's, we've never really done that kind of evaluation, but it's got to be huge.
We have run the numbers, and the question is how big you want to scale this. So, start with the assumption that the United States has the largest exclusive economic zone on Earth, another one of the blessings of this country. The exclusive economic zone was created by the Magnuson-Stevens Act in 1972, something like that. We all laid claim to, it can't have been, it must have been the International UN. Every country of the world said, okay, we control the 200 miles off our shores. That's ours, which is sort of interesting when we start dealing with Cuba because we're a little closer than that. And there's this tiny little segment of the Gulf of Mexico, just this tiny little segment that isn't owned by somebody or claimed by somebody. But the U.S. has as many square miles, almost as many square miles of ocean shore as we do square mileage country. We have about 3.5 million square miles of land. Alaska's a big part of that. Interestingly, China has the same amount, almost exactly the same amount of land as we do, but they've got 5 or 6 times as many people, depending on whose estimates you listen to. So, if our ocean territory is equal to our land territory, and if we used about 10% of that to do this concept that LiveFuels is proposing, which is inducing upwelling, to farm algae, to feed to fish, some of which will be contained, but some of the algae will get away from us and will feed the 1 billion tons, 1 billion tons of critters that every night rise from the dark scattering layer to feed. Cliff knows those numbers better than I do, so I ought to ask him. We're looking at 5 million jobs just in the U.S. Just in the U.S. Generating food, because about 40% of the fish is what you eat, unless you're a good person and you eat the head and the tail and everything else. But if you eat salmon, usually you eat about 40% of it. Most of the fat, however, is in the other 60%. In the belly, in the eyes, in the organs, in the brain. And a lot of that is the omega-3s. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of that. You can have 5% of that fat being the omega-3s, so you could pull the omega-3s out. And oh, incidentally, in the last 8 years, a lot of the people in this room are guilty of taking fish oil. It's a good thing for every one of us, but fish oil consumption has quadrupled. So we've gone from 20,000 tons to 90,000 tons, and in the next 4 years, it's going to go to 500,000 tons. This is scaring the aquaculture community to death, particularly the salmon guys, because salmon will not thrive in a farmed setting if they don't have at least 25% of their feed as fish meal and fish oil. And research is trying to get that down to 15%, but that's the overhead, that's the ceiling. If you haven't got that fish oil, those salmon won't thrive and a lot of other fish won't either. So you're looking at food, feed, fuel, fertilizer, because if we could saturate the demand for omega-3s, fish oil, feed, and fertilizer, the rest of that fish oil could be burned. It could be replacing petroleum and be either carbon neutral or carbon negative. That's 5 million jobs minimum.
Let's go ahead and open it up to the audience. Yes, sir. There's a mic right behind you.
My name is Randy Flood. I'm with the Green Jobs Alliance. And 2 years ago, when we were here, we talked about, everybody was pumped very much for the climate change bill, and we thought we were going to get some action and that type of thing. And not very many of us were talking about jobs. I'd love to see a film on jobs. I'd love to see something that deals with Tom Freeman's Hot, Flat, and Crowded that really gives all of us a blueprint of where we actually need to go. Casey and I were talking about it just a few minutes ago about the jobs to be created. And one of the things we haven't been able to successfully do in the environmental community is that every time there's an oil spill, the very first thing that the oil companies do, and they do it very successfully, they spend billions and billions of dollars doing it. They talk about the jobs that are going to be lost if you shut down oil. They talk about the jobs that are going to be lost if the rigs go away. The fact is, we've never countered that successfully. And what we need to do is have a film every bit as effective as Inconvenient Truth, in my judgment, Greg, that we need to carve out a chunk where we talk about the jobs that are going to be created through offshore wind, talk about clean energy jobs, talk about marine spatial planning, talk about the research that could be done on these offshore wind towers in terms of aquaculture. There's so many things that we don't get out there and we don't tell our story. We can't expect to be winners if we don't convey the concern to the American people, because quite frankly, I love polar bears too, but the American people during a bad economy aren't going to get it with the polar bears. They're going to want to know where the jobs are going to be coming from, and I think we got to complement the share of nature and the concerns about the environment, environmental protection, with the fact that how do we relate to the American people and what can we do in our community, the environmental community, the ocean community, to create the jobs that will resonate with all of America. So I ask you to do that. Thank you.
To build on that, and I only talked about diving jobs in particular, but there's also data out there in terms of what recreation and tourism does bring to the overall economy. For example, in California, 75% of the jobs in the coastal economies are tourism and recreationally driven. That could be indeed part of that. We've also identified in these surveys and studies that non-consumptive coastal visitors, and these people who are not fishermen and are not there just exclusively to collect marine life, sea life, spend 40 times more when they're there than visitors who are there just to fish, for example. Also, nationwide, the data shows that coastal tourism and recreation creates 1.7 million jobs and adds $70 billion to the gross domestic product.
And to second that, you know, we tend as a community here to focus on these big new possibilities, 5 million jobs here, jobs in wind, when we ignore a lot of the jobs that I talked about this morning. And part of the reason for that is most of those jobs are in estuaries and right in the very near shore. They're not deep ocean, they're not far off. And somehow we've missed them. We've missed them perhaps, and we get back to filmmaking because you can't do really good filming in 6 inches of murky water. But there are lots of jobs there. And so if you look at the things that we're not talking about, we don't have to go offshore. The second thing I think we have to keep in mind too is we've got to be really explicit about what kinds of jobs we're creating. So I spend a lot of time in down East Maine. You see a lot of people with bumper stickers that say LNG equals job, J-O-B, right? And I talk to people there and I say, well, where did you get your master's in engineering? Because if you don't have that master's in engineering, you're not going to be part of the first round of job hires. You're a lobsterman with a 10th grade education. We've got to be thinking about something that's more feasible and takes advantage of the options that we have now. So, you know, when we have these big conversations about jobs and potential jobs, we can't turn our back on jobs we already have. And I think one of the places that you're going to hear more about in this conference is restoration jobs. It is not free or easy to both build wetlands and keep wetlands from eroding. So the more we can do to get payments for ecosystem services so we can employ people in nourishing wetlands with sediments that they're being starved of, planting seagrasses, those are real jobs and those are local jobs.
I wanted to put my comment in the form of a question. Los Angeles, we tried to get Geraldine Nance here, president of the America's Port of Los Angeles. The LA Long Beach complex is like the 5th largest in America, 5th largest in the world. And in the last few years, she's been part of an initiative to green the port. She's not here today because she's in Korea being named president of the International Harbor and Ports Association. There's at least 50,000 jobs in that, port complex. Plus, the ILWU is engaged now in a lot of the same environmental issues that we're addressing. So I think another interesting area is just to look at not only counting the jobs, but the transformation of maritime labor right now and maritime work like the ports. People don't think about the ports, but they're really starting to green up and become part of what we're aiming at, which is sort of more sustainable seas. And maybe you could just talk about where maritime jobs, traditional maritime jobs, are coming in line with concepts like, ecological sustainability, marine spatial planning, and the like.
Yeah, so what Geraldine is doing is building that layer cake I talked about, Astrid and Tegan's layer cake. That it's not maritime versus green jobs. It's not oil versus something else. It's not commercial fishing versus no fishing. It is you can reduce your impact, these externalities, at a cost that is smaller than the benefits you gain. And so what Geraldine is saying is, look, it doesn't take that much to start greening the port and getting people back into the port, eating seafood dinners, spending the afternoon walking around, taking whale watch and dolphin trips. But that's not the way the port's been run in the past. It's been highly industrial. People didn't want to go down there. So this is part of building the layer cake of sustainability. There are very few activities that we do that you can do just one thing and do it sustainably. And I think that's what we're seeing in the maritime industry. We have big boats and yachts now that are doing double duty as scientific research collection devices, right? That's building the layer cake. We have to keep working on that. And I think we can do it in every single thing we do in the ocean.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think Maersk Lines has substantially reduced their fuel consumption, their design of their hulls, their ships. Wärtsilä has redesigned props and drive systems. And there's a whole lot of change and transition that we can measure in the transportation and port system as it changes to a more green system. I don't know that there's as much opportunity other than accident prevention in offshore drilling that we could measure in the same way as a good job versus a destructive extractive job.
Mm-hmm. You first, and then you in the back.
The emphasis on jobs. In our state, aquaculture, both shellfish and finfish aquaculture, have been the predominant lobby for jobs. And that's the only topic we have as far as that is the main thing we're supposed to be protecting. And what we've seen are native species and our habitat are being destroyed because of the expansion of that industry. We're also very concerned that NOAA, with the new comments and all the plans on expansion of aquaculture, we're one of the targeted areas. And Hawaii is another area for Sierra Club that they're a targeted area. So it'll be very welcome to us to see more conversations on economics and the other aspects and the other jobs, because it's really hard for us when we get into this discussion of what are the numbers. We know recreation, we have tourism, but it's really hard to quantify all that. And I agree with that gentleman there that a film about what is the value of all these things to everybody, because you may not live near an ocean, but so many people go visit an ocean. And as we tell people in Puget Sound now, we don't want our kids going to a museum to see a beach. We love museums, but we don't want them to see what a starfish is because they have to go to a museum to see it. Thank you.
And I just, your comments really harken back to the age-old discussion that we have. It's livelihoods versus lifestyles. And that's just a completely false dichotomy, because most of our discretionary spending is on our lifestyles, and that supports a lot of jobs. So it's no longer the case, and people are starting to slowly come around to recognize that you don't have to kill something or pull it out of the ground for it to be considered a livelihood. And so I think that's where we're going. I can't speak directly to the aquaculture issues, because I'm speaking here in my role as a Director of Ocean and Coastal Policy at Duke, not as NOAA, just a disclaimer. But everything we do, we have to think about what's that trade-off.
Hi, Greg. Nick Coburn Phillips. I have a question, quite a simple one, but I think it's most pertinent with regards to your beautiful footage for polar bears. Critically, at this point in time, excellent timing. The time is now with regards to climate change. The question, quite simply, is it going to be available for iPad and iPhone? Because we need to, engage the youth of today and tomorrow, and they've got all these smartphones everywhere, and that's my question.
Yeah, that's a good question, because we are trying to reach almost 1 billion people, and yes, we are. Well, in fact, our tagline is iPhone to IMAX. We'll have about 1,000 YouTube and iPhone-ish kinds of small, little, cool things that kids will gravitate to and get engaged with. And I've got a team of 6 editors working on those right now. We're stockpiling them. They'll start to come out with the campaign, which is beginning in November.
And another one is quite a puzzling thing, even as a marine scientist. What's this wording, non-consumptive? I mean, I'm really quite confused about this. I had a bit of a discussion with somebody in LinkedIn about this, and how can anything, when it's involving like marine environment, be non-consumptive? Because even though you go down, you use your yacht or whatever, you're still consuming. Diving. Hi, Mr. PADI. I'm a PADI professional as well. Nice to see you. But even scuba diving is consumptive. So I don't get it. Could somebody enlighten me, please?
Yeah, I think this is part of what Linwood was talking about in referring to David Guggenheim and recirculating aquaculture. We're looking at things that are more sustainable. We are not necessarily achieving perfect sustainability. And I think that all of these things are, about the only thing that's non-consumptive use of the ocean is sitting on the beach and looking at it. But even there, you had to get to the beach, and you burned some sort of fuel to get there. And so nothing is absolute, and nothing necessarily can be, because we're just, consumptive animals.
And it's a term of art that we've replaced that non-consumptive, which was supposed to really indicate the difference between extraction and non-extraction. So the term of art now is extractive and non-extractive. But once again, in the surveys we did of people using the coast in Southern California, it's very hard to find someone who is 100% of either. People that we normally considered extractive users, recreational fishers who are keeping their fish, they like to see birds and whales too. So it's true, everything requires energy. And God knows surfers spend a lot of carbon driving around looking for waves, right? So non-consumptive isn't the right, what's that? Well, Surfline could have reduced that, right? We have more information. But the point isn't non-consumptive versus consumptive. The point really is extractive versus non-extractive, and characterizing what your extraction is and how sustainable that is.
I mean, we need oil to lubricate wind machines.
Yeah, and I'm the one guilty of using non-consumptive in the old definition. What I was using was that you're there to observe, not to take marine resources out. That was my pure focus on that. And it's, again, I've just learned to change my terminology.
Hi, my name is Trevor Mendelow. I work with, I run an organization called Teams for Oceans. And I have a question for Greg. Greg, I work with a lot of school teachers who use movies that, similar to the one that you're going to produce, to teach young people about the beauty of the ocean and about species diversity and things that we all care about. And I show young people movies like Louis Ahoy's The Cove. And I think the problem that young people have is they cannot reconcile the beauty of the ocean and what's happening. They want to know, they really want to know what they can do to get involved. And one of the problems, obviously, is that many school teachers can't answer the very simple questions that they have. Like, for instance, do you have to eat salmon to get omega-3? And teachers don't know enough nutritionally to advise their school kids. And so one of the things I wonder, hearing this comment about films that deal with the economy and with jobs, shouldn't we really be teaching kids about how to create jobs through creativity? And it seems as though our school systems are so depauperate in developing programs that teach kids about how to be creative. And I work with school kids who are more creative than most adults that I work with. And I think that's one kind of aspect of our education system that I think these films could really, really help with if they had meaningful materials developed ahead of time that school kids could use and then watch the film as kind of divulging, oh wow, this is I now understand why I have to get involved. And it doesn't require a lot of resources to show a film in a classroom, especially if those materials are developed ahead of time and made available on a wide scale, so that you don't run into people who say, The Cove? I've never heard of The Cove. The fact that people haven't heard of this movie and haven't seen this movie amazes me.
Me too.
So my question is really, what kind of forethought has been put into developing educational materials that will allow that widespread marketing that you say you spend $55 million on? And I just wonder how much of that is really going to impact young people.
Yeah. In fact, we're focused on young people. We're directing about a third of our effort towards under 10-years and another third to 10 to 20-year-olds, principally because there's a tremendous success in the nag factor. Every parent understands what I'm talking about. And what we're developing is a whole campaign that will get kids involved. Through their schooling, every teacher will have a teacher's guide that she or he can download off of our website to develop a lesson plan. Every year, or several times a year, we'll have a competition. We'll give kids footage that they can edit in a fashion. We'll give them music that they can use for free. We'll have competitions for brilliance in editing and brilliance in conceiving, thinking about new things in new ways. There's 13 different projects, all directed towards kids and infants. We have a program with the Muppets in the Ocean, that we've been developing for the last 4 years. We've already tested it in Boston at the Museum of Science there. Tremendously well received. 97% of the parents who came with their infants loved the program. We're trying to actually take a very professional way of developing this campaign, almost as if you would a presidential campaign, to try to reach out to everyone at all different parts of the political spectrum. We're trying to engage everyone into this one caring for the ocean, understanding it better, trying to think about it much more often in your life, iPhone to IMAX, engaging people every single day of their lives. And we hope that we're a big success, but part of our success will be driven out of our partnerships that we develop. And that's why I mentioned partnerships in my talk. We're actually here to develop those partnerships. We're not looking to put our name on anything. We want to partner and make the ocean a better place.
I think we can also be much more creative ourselves. And since we have people from the film industry and television industry here, I want to point out that we've done a really good job of showing how people screw up the ocean. We've done a really good job of showing how there are parts of the ocean that you just can't, they're fascinating, but it's not for you. You don't have a rebreather, you don't have an Alaskan crab boat, you don't have a submersible submarine. We haven't done a very good job of showing people why the ocean matters to them, except that it has to tug at your heartstrings. And so I think we've got to do that. And when you talk about jobs, we need to be showing people why, if you live in Kansas, you still need to care about the ocean. Because I have had people on the Hill say, why is the coast a federal issue? Can't you, it only affects people down on the coast, right? Yeah. It's not true. Everything's connected. And we haven't really done a good job of that. And so I think tomorrow Kyle will talk about the plastic bag that goes all across the ocean. Well, there are lots of things that start in the ocean and end up, in your mind in Kansas or in your mouth in Kansas or, some other way that you in Kansas end up at the coast. And we really need to do a better job of talking about that in a public media too.
I don't need a microphone, thank you. My name's Jeff Hoffberger. I am the South Jersey coordinator for Clean Ocean Action volunteer efforts. I'm also the co-chairman for South Jersey Surfrider Foundation, and I'm a volunteer for the Marine Mammal Stranding Center. That's located in Bridgeton, New Jersey. When we're talking about the economy and jobs, one thing I think that needs to be stressed, and it has not been brought up here yet, so I will bring it up now, is that at least in New Jersey and in South Jersey especially, your summer lifeguards are teachers. We all know that teachers are not paid anywhere near what they're worth. So they subsidize their income by being lifeguards during the summer months. When you have pollution, when you have oil spills, Jersey was famous for years for having needles on the beach. We've had tons and tons of pollution. Through Surfrider and through Cindy's efforts with Clean Ocean Action, we have eliminated 90% of that, and our beaches are quite clean. Number one, it's a multi-billion-dollar tourism industry in New Jersey for the beaches to be open every summer. Number two, I don't know if anybody's run the numbers, surfing industry used to be considered non-green. It is totally reversing itself. But that is a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States alone. So I would just like to ask the panel if anybody's run those numbers and what do you see in the future for surfing's impact as far as being non-consumptive as much as possible and not running around doing surf checks every day. B, what do you foresee in the future as far as the economic impact for the beach community in its entire self throughout the country?
I think you have to answer that one, Linwood.
Okay. Well, where we're starting is really starting to uncover how much surfing contributes to local economies. So I did a study of Rincon, Puerto Rico, that demonstrated how much money in the local economy was driven by surfers. And that led in part to the creation of the Tres Palmas Marine Reserve, the first marine reserve created to protect a surfing resource. Now, mind you, New Zealand set aside 16 important surf spots for national protection in this year's coastal policy, an incredible thing to do. But surfers face high gas prices and they make decisions, and when surfers face low gas prices, they make other decisions. They're not different than anyone else. We use technologies to try to limit how much we drive around, and I think it gets back to localvore, right? Being a localvore surfer, you just can't drive 90 miles a day to surf anymore. So I think that's happening. You're referring to things also like greener boards, greener surf wax. It's happening in all the industries. It's happening in recreational fishing. It's just a matter of pushing all of these industries. And like I said, you can do it right or you can do it wrong. And people respond to the same kind of incentives no matter whether they're fishing or driving cars or surfing.
One last question.
Sure.
Hi, Lissa from Clean Ocean Action.
He's right behind you.
We're a coalition of organizations, boaters, divers, surfers, fishermen, beachgoers, traditional fish huggers, but in addition, the whole economic value as well, boards of realtors, chambers of commerce, and that interconnectedness has made New Jersey a much cleaner, greener state than it was. Our region, New York and New Jersey, is a lot better. It used to be a laughing stock. Now, at least, it is a destination spot for a lot of people to enjoy the beach. And so it can be done if you bring the power of the industry and the power of the people together. I just wanted to add that as we say at Clean Ocean Action, it doesn't matter what your interest. You are interested in the ocean because every other breath you take is a gift from the sea. So even if you're not interested in fish, you're not interested in many of the other aspects of the marine environment, you do like to breathe. And so that connection is one that I think we all need to emphasize, particularly as we try to get the internal parts of the state, the red states, if you will, to try to convince them that that they're blue as well. If not politically, just their connection to the ocean is life-sustaining. My question is to all of us: why aren't we engaging those industry groups, the power of the economy of the ocean, the power of the people to drive our ocean policy? And I guess it's more of a rhetorical question for all of us to take back to our campaigns and to our states, is to really look for new and unique and interesting partnership, because we're all in this together. Thanks.
I think that's very true, and I think that's a great place to stop. I'm going to ask everybody to remain in your seats. We're going to bring a ladder up here and take a group photograph of all of you in the room. And so join me in thanking our panel, and then I'm going to ask our panel to come down and sit so we can do the photograph.
Thank you. Well, Jeffrey's setting up the ladder for our schooling shot. Couple of housekeeping things. If you looked in your beach bag, you should have your program. You should also have the program for this evening's Peter Benchley Ocean Award.